Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Dentistry Who Invest official podcast. We've got an absolute blinder here today. We've got a man who barely needs an introduction, of course, to us dentists. His reputation precedes him. He's written 3 books, would you believe? 3 books on marketing, communication, and dentistry. A lot of us have been on his courses as well. His name, in case you haven't heard of him, I'm sure you have, his name is Ashley Ladder. How are you tonight, Ashley?
Great, James. Yourself? Good. Really good, thank you.
Tremendous, mate. I'm smashing. I've had a day off, so I'm recharged. My battery's at peak capacity. I'm happy. I'm ready to go. I'm a lot more alive than what could be expected to be normal on a Friday night, which is brilliant. Ashley has got the most wonderful array of Man United shirts in his office that I can see behind him. For people who are listening, you won't be able to quite regard the spectacle that's there, but there's at least 20 shirts there, and most of them are signed. So I'm blown away. That is quite something. Any Manchester United fans would be in dreamland in that place. Wow.
Yeah. A few of them are my gifts for my 50th birthday party, and it's just going to charity events. I think I'm probably have too much to drink, and I end up keeping my hand up last for these bids. So I end up coming home with a shirt.
Oh, I see. Well, hopefully one day I'll have as many signed Arsenal shirts as you do Man United shirts, because that really is.
Oh, okay.
I can see a signed gig shirt behind Ashley for anybody who can't see, who's listening on the podcast, and that really, wow, I'm blown away. That really is something. Fair play. Good stuff. Cool. So, as we already know, Ashley has got quite his reputation precedes him in the dental industry. He's quite well known, but maybe a lot of people don't really know the story behind how Ashley came to be prominent in dentistry, because he is, of course, not a dentist. Ashley, would you like to share with us how you came to be known in the dental industry as this great person that helps us communicate on the topic of sales so well, despite not coming from a dental background? What was your journey?
Sure. Well, I in February 2021, I'll be celebrating my 28th year as a business trainer, sales coach.
You've been a business trainer almost as many years as I've been alive, because I'm 29.
Yeah.
Wow.
I feel it anyway. Today I feel it. But anyway, But the journey started, I think, about 22, 23 years ago. I was delivering a 2-day sales training course in North Manchester. We had about 20 delegates on the course, but people like engineers, recruitment, IT. But right at the bottom of the list was 2 dentists. And I was racking my brains why 2 dentists were taking a sales training course. So I got to meet them the night before, and I said, guys, why are you taking a sales course? And they were NHS dentists. They could place veneers, crowns, implants. They could do all the dentistry, but what they couldn't do was get the patient over the line. They would talk very technical. They would write large treatment plans and say, go home and think about it. And then they would often discount in the head. So if the fee was £500 or pounds, by the time it came out of the mouth, it would be £420. £80 would go missing.
I've been there so many times, and I don't know what it is. I thought it was just me, to be honest.
No. It's about 98% of you do it.
Wow.
So they took part on this sales training course, and as they left on the second day, I said to them, how was it? And they put their thumbs up, but I didn't think they really enjoyed it. So I said to them, I'll give you a call in about 6 to 8 weeks. And 6-8 weeks later, I'm lying on my couch at home, and I was thinking, I wonder how those 2 dentists got on. Should I give them a call? Should I not? Should I give them a ring? And anyway, I decided to ring them. And I must admit, I was a bit nervous making the phone calls because I didn't think they enjoyed it. But nothing really could be further from the truth. They both told me that their treatment plan acceptance had increased. More patients were saying yes. They weren't discounting anymore. Their books are full. But the main thing they told me was, for the first time ever, they were delivering the dentistry they loved to do and their patients wanted. And that was the key thing. So I kept in touch with them. One guy in particular, a guy there called Neil Sampson, who I'm still friends with today. And, they told their mates. And about 6 to 8 months later, I delivered my first ever, we called it the Ethical Sales and Communication course. We had 27 dentists. It was a brilliant 2 days. I rang all those dentists up over a series of weeks, and they all said the same. The books are full, more patients saying yes. did live in the dentistry they love to do, and they told their mates. So really, from 2 dentists, the first 2 or 3 years, it was a slow burner. I was doing it part-time, if you might say. But then after about, probably about 18, 19 years ago, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this full-time. So I went full-time into dentistry, solely working with dentistry, and the rest is history. So if you fast forward today, I've now delivered close on 33,000 hours of business training to the dental world, all over the world, USA, Sydney, India, Singapore, different countries. I'm speaking today from a 3,000 square foot training center. And we have about 10 different courses, from the ethical sales course to a speaking course to an entrepreneur group, practice managers club. We train young dentists as well who are just graduated. We've got special courses for those guys. As you say, I've written 3 books, and so I'm pretty pleased I made 2 phone calls 22 years ago, because if I hadn't, it might have been a completely different story. So that's my story, basically.
Tell you what, the doors that open, you don't know what's behind them until you open them, and it can even be as simple as a phone call. It kind of reminds me, not to go off too much in a tangent, but have you heard about how Ray Kroc started McDonald's?
Yeah.
The story, he was a milkshake salesman. He sold 1 to 2 milkshake machines to various different fast food restaurants. One day he got an order for 6, and he thought to himself, that's a bit strange and out of the blue. What are these guys doing differently? He went out of his way to contact these people, who had, ordered 6 milkshakes from him, 6 milkshakes machines. He wanted to know what their secret was. He went down to, you'll have to remind me, was it Kentucky? Something, I don't even know where McDonald's originally is from, just to check out what was going on. He saw a restaurant that was taking off and it was booming. He thought to himself, I'll have a slice of that. The restaurant was called the McDonald's Brothers, and the rest is history. So, wow. Yeah. I have to say, again, so just in case anybody hasn't heard that story before, myself and Ashley have, obviously, but that's an interesting one, and it kind of just reminded me of that. The other thing I was going to say, just as a personal anecdote regarding your books, Ashley, it's the stuff that's in them. I always used, because I made the transition from NHS to private, and I used to notice that for whatever reason, my patient return rate after I had the initial consultation was terrible. And I used to turn the charm on, I felt like I was being, nice to these people, hopefully not rubbing them up the wrong way. It began to make me think to myself that perhaps I was. But I read your book and I realized a lot of the red flags that you talk about in there, I was committing. I wasn't locking them in for their second appointments. I was saying, go off, Mrs. Jones, go and think about it. That is honestly the silliest thing, because the number of people that won't come to the dentist unless you somehow enforce them to, or at least you've got it locked in a little bit, is quite out of the ordinary. And I suppose I understand it in the way, because it is, most people will avoid it where possible. So you almost have to kind of ensure that they do. And it's not just because you're thinking about your own pocket, it's because you're thinking about how can we help these people as well and ensure that they come back. So that was one that really resonated with me. I can't remember which one of your 2 books it was, your 3 books it was from. I've only read 2 of them, but anyway, it really, really helped me. You're reaching over.
It must be in this one. Don't wait for the Tooth Fairy.
Ah, yes, I believe it was. Was. And your little system about the different characters that you encounter, the passive, the active, how to sell to different individuals. That was something that I just had no clue about until I read those books. So they helped me tremendously. Ashley is not paying me to say these things, by the way. Hand on heart, they really, really helped me. Anyway, Ashley, thank you so much for that introduction that you've given us. That's wonderful. I wanted to know as well, we touched a little bit on this just a second ago. Why are we so bad at selling as dentists? What do you think that you could describe succinctly, nail on the head, why we're so bad at doing it?
Well, I wouldn't say you're all bad at it. I wouldn't say you're great at it either, but there is some people that do it reasonably well. Well, you've got to remember, first of all, you are technicians by nature, and you've gone into the healthcare business to help people. So you probably went to university not thinking about communication. Obviously, you weren't taught these skills at university either. Nobody I think somebody once said to me they've had 1 hour's education on communication. So you are engineers, and you've spent all your life learning how to to do the technical side of dentistry, but haven't spent any time learning the communication side. And if you think about, I mean, you're a private dentist, so you should know this, but when you're in a consultation with a patient, whether the patient's coming to speak to you about a certain treatment, or you're just having a normal consultation with an existing patient, about 85 to 90% of your financial success, whether a patient will go ahead or not, will all come down to skills and attitude. And skills such as communication skills, good listening skills, great at asking questions. You mentioned it before, saying to the patient, how does that sound? Is that the sort of thing you're looking for, rather than saying, go home and think about it? And attitudinal things like positive, flexibility, enthusiasm, confidence. 85% is down to those two areas, and only 15% is applicable to the product knowledge. Well, the problem is that most dentists spend all their time learning the product knowledge, but spend very little time developing the skills and attitude. So you learn all the technical stuff, but you don't spend any time learning what really is the most important areas, or the equally as most important areas, which is the skills and attitude. So that's probably the reasons why, but probably going back to what I've already said before, the main reason is that you probably went into university in healthcare not thinking about, having to sell it.
Totally. How long did it take you personally to get around all the technical terms and jargon that we use? Or are you still getting there? Because
I'm still getting there.
Tell you what, 5 years of university, and I still hear terms from time to time that I've never come across before. So hats off to you, Ashley, for.
Well, it's changed. It's obviously changing all the time now. With ITO scanners and different scanner machines and dental monitoring. So, I mean, it's all changing all the time. So I just need to keep a little bit abreast of it and make sure that I have an understanding of it all. But I don't. Although I often say nowadays that I can probably place a crown and do fillings. I've spent that much time with dentists,
but definitely have a stab. I mean, I'm sure you could. Yeah. You could talk the patient into it.
I could talk to them, but I can't do the dentistry. I said, "It'll do. I'll sell it for you, and you can do it."
I actually read something in your book that I'd never come across before, which was a technical term in dentistry. It was the proportion of copper that's in an orthodontic wire, 6%. Maybe you don't remember this in your book. I learned that from your book. But I hold my hands up and I say I'm not an orthodontist. So yeah, this is just another microcosm of how much jargon there is out there. And yeah, like I say, hats off to Ashley for persevering. Ashley, we've talked about selling NHS versus private. What are the specific challenges to each? How do they compare? And how do you teach them on your course? Can you just elaborate a little bit the difference between those two?
Sure. I mean, I would say that the vast majority of the dentists who are coming on our courses are NHS, but wanting to do more private. If I look at, I've delivered 4 courses this week, and I would say that the vast majority of them. So, in short, how do I do with it? Okay, so in short, what patients are interested in is what's the difference and what are the benefits? What's in it for me? Now, what a lot of dentists do is to focus on what they call the features of the product or service. But actually, the features is fine, but you have to link it to the benefit and what difference it's going to make to the patient. So if you are let's say you're a hairdresser, and we're talking about, NHS crowns or private crowns. So, what's the difference between the two? And what's the advantage of the patient having a private crown? And what does it mean to them? So you've got to explain to them what the difference is, what the advantages are, and then tailor it to the patient. And that's what you've got to do if you really want to increase your uptake of private against NHS, because patients aren't interested in the features. They want to know what's in it for me. So if I'm going to pay $225 for an NHS crown or 500 for private. What's the difference? What's the benefits, and what's it gonna mean to me? Now, the other thing you've got to do is not make assumptions about who's going to buy and who's not going to buy. I had a dentist on a course this week, great dentist, lovely guy, and he makes assumptions about his patients. So sometimes he offers it some and doesn't offer it others. Well, when you do that, you're missing out on lots of opportunities. So the major advantage the major advice I would give to people is not only talk about the benefits and what it means to the patient, but also make sure you offer it everybody and don't make assumptions about who will and who won't, because a lot of dentists do that. And if you do that, offer it to everybody and talk about the benefits, then you will see, and you've got some good models, you've got maybe some before and after pictures and models to show the patients, then you should see an increase in your uptake of private treatment.
One thing, as well as that, when I made the transition into private, it's on NHS, you have more of a carte blanche, I think, to offer a different treatment based on its features. So let's say you're on the NHS, you can say to someone, well, the NHS pays for what's functional, but they don't necessarily pay for anything over and above that. So where I used to come from on the whole private, whether or not I was prepared to undertake some work privately or under NHS would be, I could come from that angle and I could say, well, if you want this MCC crown, it's very practical, it lasts for very long, that'll be available on the NHS. Whereas if you want this lovely porcelain crown, it'll have lovely primary and secondary anatomy, then I'm afraid because of the lab bill is so much higher, then that would be a private treatment. The thing that made it difficult for me was when I came into private in the first place, I found it difficult to justify the price to people, particularly if there was, if something was very time consuming and would take me a while. I found that a really nice thing to say to someone was that if you could talk about the labs and big them up and big the job that they were going to do up and how difficult and time consuming it is for them, it helped me sell a lot more treatment. And also, just what you were saying there, it's always great. We should never make assumptions as professionals, and that carries through to our selling as well. Ashley, on your course, you've been doing this for however long now. On your course, if you had a top 10 hit list or a top 10 things of gripes, things that bother you when dentists come to see you, it doesn't have to be 10, but most common things that crimes that dentists commit that kind of talk themselves out of selling things, what would you say might be on that top 10?
Okay, so the biggest mistakes they make.
Yeah. Or is it going to be difficult to narrow down to 10?
No. I can do this for you. Listen. I've delivered 32,000 hours, so I should know them by now. I think some of the biggest mistakes they make is they don't spend enough time building rapport. We have dentists who take my course and they come back. They come back and again and again and again. Once they come on, that's it. They're hooked. They come on every year virtually. But often when I speak to dentists, they say I'm spending more time with my patient. I'm getting to know them better. And I've learned more about the patient in one meeting than I have in the last 20 years. So that's one thing. The other thing, the biggest mistake dentists make is they don't ask enough questions. So they tend to sell the treatment without really truly fully finding out what the patient's wants and needs are. So they don't ask enough questions. If a patient comes in and they're interested in something, they may ask one question and then they start jumping into, here's how we can help you, this is what it is and this is what it does, and you start talking about the process. So and also because of that, you make assumptions about patients. So because you make assumptions about patients, you're not asking enough questions and you're missing out on opportunities. So that's another a big mistake that dentists tend to make. I'll give you a great example. So if a patient comes in and they say, I'm interested in teeth whitening, well, the dentist will launch into a presentation of, well, there's two ways of doing it. And what we do is we take an impression, we send it to a lab, and then what we do is make these trays, molds. I mean, you can relate to this. You're laughing as we're speaking about it.
I do. I just see myself in it. I really do.
Yeah.
And I assume they've maybe got this sciencey, technical-minded brain, because that's what us dentists, we we just enjoy. We almost get a weird thrill out of it, but really,
Yeah.
most of society doesn't think in that way.
Yeah, we see that's the other big issue. You see, you tend, because you're researchers, you research. A lot of dentists research a lot. They're like engineers. So when they're buying something themselves, they tend to be slow decision makers and spend hours and hours and hours researching. So when they go actually and buy the thing themselves in the shop, they actually know more than the salesperson selling to them. So they think that it must be the same for the patients. They want to know absolutely everything. So if you visit dentist websites, for example, and they go, let's say you go to the implant section, it talks all about the journey, the process, the titanium screws, the jawbone anesthetic, osseointegration, the suture. It's very technical. So they tend to talk too technical. That's another big mistake dentists tend to make. And the other big mistake they make is that they discount their fees a lot. They're not particularly great at discussing fees, so they will tend to discount, make assumptions that the patient wouldn't pay that. So if they reduce the fee, they think that more patients might say yes. But every 10% reduction in their fees, you're losing 25, 30% of your net profit. So those are the big mistakes I find that dentists make. There's a lot more, but those are sort of 5 or 6 there that I find that a lot of dentists tend to make when they come on the courses.
I think a lot of listeners will recognize themselves in that. And that's not any critique on your character. These are just common things that make us all human. And these were 100% things that I did that almost talked myself out of a sale even before I'd made it, because they're almost psychological barriers that we create ourselves. So yeah, definitely, as I say, good. It's interesting to hear that, I suppose. When you began learning about selling, I know this is your background. Us dentists don't have that background necessarily. Now, I know that they can come on your course and that will assist them in that journey. Was there some really great resources that you found helped you to become more au fait with communication and selling? So let's say books, so let's say websites, let's say people you met, I don't know.
I used to work for the Dale Carnegie Training Organization, which is the world's leading global training organization in the world. So I used to sell their courses, I used to teach the courses, and then eventually I became an international master trainer. So I went around the world training to become trainers. So when I joined Carnegie, I literally became a lifelong learner of sales and communication and marketing. So I was a 5-course instructor. So I was always learning to deliver the courses, deliver the training. But I would say the big moment in my life was after year one of working with Dale Carnegie, selling their training courses in Salford and Trafford Park. By the way, I was dreadful at it. I think the first year I earned about £8,000. So, but what I did was I went to the States and I went to learn from the number one Dale Carnegie salesman in the world. So he was delivering a weekend course for a Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And I paid to go over, it was in New York or just outside New York. And I paid to go on this course myself. I took a whole weekend away and I went. And I actually did the course when I actually didn't have any money in the bank to pay for it. I put it on a credit card. But what I learned over those 3 days basically changed my life. And I learned the principles of ethical selling, that it's not about hard selling. It's not about pushing or controlling. It really is about rapport building and asking questions. So when I came back from that course, I instantly got great results. My sales figures went up and I instantly did better. So once that happened, I just became a lifelong learner about sales and marketing. And I still spend, I would say, about an hour every single day. And I mean that 6 days a week. I may have a day off on a Sunday or something, but I'm always learning about sales and marketing. So I sign up to 4 or 5 different gurus. I get their webinars each week. I enroll on a business TV program. I'm reading books all the time. And one book leads you to the next book, if that makes sense. You read a book and then it leads you on to another book, it leads on to another book.
I'm like that
So,
with finance books. Sorry to just interject. I
yeah,
always think to myself, the next book's going to be the final one, then I'm going to be the guru.
no,
And then you read that one, and there's like 5 more whole tangents you can go on with the books it recommends.
correct.
You never quite get there, do you?
You never do. And I absolutely love it. So for me, it's a hobby. It's not work. I often have my dinner at home and I'll take the dogs for a walk for an hour and I'll listen to something. If I come back with one idea, or sometimes it might be the whole week when I come back with one good idea. But then if I implement it and it works, then I'm delighted. So I'm always learning. I'm always picking up new what the latest is and what's going on, and rehashing. And I learn a lot from my clients. So every week we have Zoom calls with my clients who've taken courses. They tell me what they've done differently using my material. And then I can change my material. I can start implementing, change the manuals, do things differently, use their success stories on the courses. So for me, listen, I'm 56 and I've probably got, I've earned the right to say this, but this is going out to people who are investing and stuff. You cannot invest money and time better than personal development on yourself, on sales, marketing, and your own personal development. You just cannot invest your money better. You can invest money in the stock exchange, you can invest money in gold, and I get all that in houses. But the greatest return back you can get on your investment is going to be always sales, going to be always marketing skills, and it's always going to be on your own personal development. And if you can invest in yourself there's no other better investment. You will not get a better return back than investing on yourself in terms of sales, marketing, and personal development, particularly at the start of your career as a dentist. And if you can, I got a dentist on my course this week. I've been working with him now for a few months. He's called Amir. He's 26, 27. He's done, 50, 60 Invisalign cases in his first year or second year. I mean, and he's invested maybe a couple of grand, £3,000 with me. And yet what's he had back in return? Something like 150, 200,000 pounds. Well, where can you get a better return back on your investment on that? You just can't. So if I was, because obviously this is about investing, you can't invest better in personal development, sales and marketing. And, I'm learning now how to write in sales. I'm learning how to craft letters and write brochures. And, only a few weeks ago, we sent an advert out, and in the space of a weekend, we took £20,000 in sales for a course. And that was an advert that probably took me 3 hours to write. So, if you're asking my advice and pinpointing it, you cannot invest your money better in yourself. And that's what I do all the time.
On that note, a lot of investors, they'll have their total investment capital, so the money that they set aside from investing after they put some money in the bank, and they will ring fence some of that, a proportion, say 5-10% every so often, just out of the total every month, whatever that is, they stash away after their salary, and they will say, this is not for traditional investing, this is for investing in me, so therefore growth and education. So that's an interesting one. It's a common technique, is that, and that just adds on to what Ashley is saying really nicely. Second thing I'll say, when you were talking about your books earlier, I saw something that you posted on Facebook, I think it was a while ago, and the caption was second bookshelf of self-help books that I've read. And this was not a small bookshelf by any stretch of the imagination. So that's what being a lifelong reader looks like. And yeah, I can only imagine the amount of information you've managed to squeeze into your head there from those books that you've read. And being a lifelong reader is something that I've become committed to over the last few years. And it almost gives me a new lease of life. You'll always realize there's more to learn. Reading books is the greatest life hack there is, I swear. The way you can differentiate yourself from other people and learn about things in depth, it's mind-blowing. It just seems something so obvious, yet so few people do it. You know what I mean? So I'm completely on board with that. You've listed your no-nos, but that's a bit of a negative. That's a bit of a downer. What about your top tips? The
The top
opposite.
tips. Top tips. Just when your patients come in, just build amazing rapport with people. Just become. Dale Carnegie said it the best way in his famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But if you are genuinely interested in people, they become genuinely interested in you. And that's just the key skill. And if you can be really good at making friends, connecting with people, really good at asking questions, and if you can do that really, really well, you will create so many opportunities. On my courses, we spend 16 hours learning how to ethical sell people, yet we only spend about 45 minutes learning how to close and gain commitment. The rest of it is just all about how to connect with people and build rapport. So, and asking the right questions. So stop selling and ask questions. And the more questions you ask, the more opportunities you will create. And the more you learn, the more you earn. And that's the big tip. And I think the second big thing that you ought to do is not to discount your fees. Get into the habit, especially if you are a young dentist, get into the habit of charging the correct fee and don't discount. Because when you discount your fees, it becomes habit and you start doing it 2-3 times a day. And before you know it, you've discounted 15 fees over a year, over a week. Times it by 40, 600-700 times a year. Well, that's big money. It adds up. Because this podcast is all about investing and generating wealth, so charge the correct fees right from the word go in your career. And if a patient says no, that's fine. Move on. Don't get discouraged, because the next patient might just say yes. So that would be the big three things that I would say is really getting to know your patients, connecting, building rapport, following up with them at home, make the odd phone call here and there, asking really good questions, create opportunities, and not to discount. Charge the correct fees. You've spent years developing the craft. You're in 7-8 years to become a really good dentist, and you keep. The thing about dentists is that they, on the whole, they keep learning, they keep developing themselves. So make sure you charge the correct fee.
We do put a lot of work in dental school, and maybe the patients don't necessarily understand that when they are looking for discount, or whenever we offer to them discount. It's almost a disservice to ourselves.
Yeah.
When you were talking earlier about when we shave, let's say we've got £1,000, let's say a crown's £1,000, expensive crown, but we'll use it because it's a round number. If your costs are 500, you deduct, you say to the patient, you've already taken some money off in your head before you've even told them the price, and you say it's 800. That's 20% off the cost of the crown to the patient, but that's actually 40% of your profit, so it's magnified. I believe you said this earlier, but I was just putting it in some nice round terms. This was a really nice way that someone explained it to me once, or perhaps I read it in your book, Ashley.
Yeah, so let me explain. So let's for simple sake, and by the way, I didn't get an O level in maths, or I think you call them GCSE, so I'm not a great mathematician. So bear with me. Let's say you sell something for 100. Yeah. And let's say, for example, the cost is 65 and you make 35 net profit. Let's just use those figures as a round, just for the example of this. Of course, yeah. Well, let's say instead of selling it for 100, you're not 10% off. And so you're selling it for 90. Okay, so you're selling something for 90 that you should be selling for 100. Now, the costs are still the same. So the cost is 65, but instead of you making 35, you're now only making 25. Okay, now, the difference between 35 and 25 is actually 28%. Yeah. So by just reducing something by 10%, you can actually knock 28% off your net profit. Yeah. So, and that's the impact. So people think, oh, it's only £10, only 10%, but actually it's not. It's 28%. That's magnified. Now, actually, it works the other way. So if you sell something for 110, your cost is still 65, but instead of 35, you're making 45 profit. So your profit goes up by 28%. So that's the good news. And that's really where you want to be focusing on, trying to increase your fees rather than deducting them.
Absolutely. And then the other thing I was just going to say, just to add on what you were talking about prior to that, was that when we have a patient, I read something a while ago that when we have a patient, it's always a good idea to try to memorize 5 things about them before they come into the room, just as conversation starters and little tangents, and it just sets you apart from the rest of the dentist that they've seen. So for me personally, I genuinely found the person's history and their story interesting. So I would almost always learn their profession and maybe where they came from, where their address, if I knew the area or not, things of that nature, because everybody's favorite subject is themselves. Everybody's favorite subjects is themselves, and even if nothing else, it'll get them to open up. It really can't not do you any favors. The only thing I'll say is there is am I right in saying it's the business type person that does slightly backfire on sometimes, and they prefer a more cold professional approach?
Yeah, I mean, I am generalising. Not everybody's like this, but there is, sometimes entrepreneurs can often be, people like myself. Sometimes we might not be the most talkative, building rapport people, and only because we're time conscious people. So often everything we do is running against the clock. So if we're going out to do business, typically that's what we want to do because we've got something else lined up straight after. So I'm not saying it, but in typically entrepreneurs are not great rapport builders, only because they're very, very, very time conscious people.
Should be mentioned that those people are generally few and far between, but it's just something to be conscious of, and something that I learned a while ago. And looking back on it, there were times where I was, really bubbly and maybe friendly to someone, and maybe in hindsight I could see they were a bit reticent to that, but I didn't recognize at the time. And now I've definitely become a little bit savvier as time went on.
Good.
That was a helpful one for me when I can't remember where I read that, but anyway, just a helpful one. Ashley, we've done a wonderful rundown today of some top tips on selling, top no-nos and things like that. How do you help on your courses? And can you just tell us a little bit more about the various different types of courses you offer? I have to admit as well, Ashley and I were talking off camera before this, and I honestly thought that maybe Ashley's courses wouldn't necessarily be run at the minute because of the COVID pandemic, but Ashley has said that that's not the case, so perhaps you could go in a little bit more detail on that for anybody else. I hope you may be thinking that too.
Yeah, so I've obviously I could talk about my courses all day, but we've got a couple of programs that for dentists. So the main core course we have is obviously the 2-day ethical sales and communication course. So that's the core program. So that teaches the dentists and their teams and treatment coordinators, the perfect consultation. I cover 8 steps from building rapport, how to ask the right questions, how to sell, how to discuss fees, overcome objections, how to close and follow up. So that's the core program. So dentists tend to take that course first. Then they take the advanced masterclass program. So that's like a refresher of the first 2 days, but then we cover the things like the 4 different personality styles. We go into very much detail of the characteristics of each one and how they buy and how we need to sell to them and how to communicate with them. We go into a lot more detail about how to get referrals and Google reviews and that type of thing. So people tend to take the 2-day course, then they come back and take the advanced course. And then we have what we call a speaking and self-confidence course. And that's a program where we teach dentists and again, team members how to be a much better communicator one-to-one and in groups of people. So we have that like a package there. So, we started from £97 a month. You can work with us over 18 months and take all 3 courses. So, which is great. We have about 300 dentists who are on that package with us. And that's brilliant because we can work with them over an 18-month period. We can see them grow and we can really make an impact on their career. And then we have like a practice success club where where dentists and so practices can put all their people on all our courses, again, for a nominal monthly fee. And on top of those 3 courses, then we have a practice managers club, and we have a reception course where we teach receptionists how to take inquiries and turn them into appointments. So those are the sort of 5 core open courses that we run, and people can come in and take those, or like I said, we have packages starting from £97 a month where dentists can take all 3 courses and work with us over a period, and we can really make an impact and a difference to their lives.
There you go, guys. Plenty of options to suit your budget if you are such ways inclined. Plenty of value given out on this podcast, and I'm sure that Ashley can go into way more detail on that. If you were, of course, interested, feel free to get in touch with them. Finally, Ashley, this is the bit at the end of the podcast that I love most. We want to freestyle a little bit. We've always got some questions on the group, Dentists Who Invest community group for Dentists Who Enjoy Trading, which you can find on Facebook. If anybody who is listening to this is not already in it, we promo these podcasts beforehand in the group. We permit people a few days beforehand to ask some questions. So finally, Ashley, if it's okay with you, we've just got some of those questions, so I might just run them by you. So let's see. I haven't read these before, by the way, so I'm sure they'll be fine, but I might have to edit them and make sense of them a little bit. Here's one. We've got a question from Suleiman Saka. Shout out to Suleiman. Suleiman would like to know, he works in a mixed NHS rural practice, and he reckons that some dentists feel uneasy discussing private fields and undervalue their professional services. He is looking for ways to overcome that. I think we kind of touched on that already, earlier, didn't we, really? Anything else you could maybe add just for Suleiman's benefit?
I think really I think we probably covered that quite a lot today, and a lot of dentists they really do undervalue themselves. I'll be biased. I would say, well, come and take a course with me, Solomon, and you'll get over that. But if you're not ready to take a course with me, but read my books. Go and buy the 2 books that I've written. Don't Wait for the Tooth Fairy, and the other book, which is a great book, which is You Are Worth It. How to discuss fees with self-confidence and achieve the income that your services deserve. Those 2 books will help you in a really, really big way. But it's the game that goes on in your head, and you need to change the message that's going on in your head. Otherwise, you'll struggle with this fees for the rest of your life, really. So I think the other thing is that you need to overcome is just accept that particularly in a mixed practice, when you're offering both types of treatments, not everyone's going to say yes to private treatment. You just need to accept is that you have a passion for it, but some patients haven't, and not everyone's going to say yes. And if they don't say yes, don't take it personal. It's never you. It's just that sometimes what you're offering is just not right for them. So you just need to count to 5 and get over it and move on.
Awesome. Next question from Suleiman. He just wants to know if you've got any top tips from marketing specifically implants. Anything you can say on that?
Oh God. I work a lot with a few corporates, and I go into their practices, some of these practices, and I spend 3 days there, and I do marketing, I do sales, and I do world-class customer care. Yeah, and what I've learned is that the most opportunities you've got are with your existing clients. If they've got loose dentures, have you ever asked them, does the denture bother you? Does it impact you eating? Is there anything at all that you'd like to change about that if you could? If they've got spaces, if they've got extractions, I'm going to some dental practices, if they've got 7 or 8 dentists, they're doing like 1,000, 1,200 extractions a year and only placing 50, 60 implants. Well, there's a massive mismatch there. Do you offer implants to all those extractions? And inevitably, when I go down there, it's less than a 5-minute conversation. So I don't think patients even know that that's an option half the time. So I would say if you're looking to place implants, do more of them, then your opportunities are definitely with your existing patients. But Solomon, I'm biased, but I deliver a ethical sales course for dentists who want to place more implants with Bill Schaefer and Stephen Jacobs. Now, Bill and Stephen are dentists who have taken courses with me now for about 12, 13 years. They place 500 to 600 implants each plus a year. And they are the most two kindest human beings you'll ever meet. You must come and take the course with me, Bill and Stephen. We're doing that in March 2021. I think we've probably got about 10 spaces left on that with social distancing, but you will get everything you need to know on how to sell and market implants on that course. So I think it's March the 19th and 20th. It's in my centre here in Manchester. Please look at it on the website and give me a shout, because you'll learn everything from that course that will help you sell, market implants for life. We've had dentists travel from Sydney to take this course in the past, so it's on your doorstep.
Great stuff. And just final two questions. The first of those is, we have a question on marketing yourself ethically as someone who is able to undertake ABB treatment. How to set yourself apart from the rising stars, that, as they've been tactfully called in this post, but which I suppose can also mean beginners or people who are quite new to dentistry, the rookies. How to tactfully market yourself as someone who is able to do that whilst also maintaining, realistic expectations from the patients. I know that that's quite an ethereal thing to talk about, Ashley. So we'll just have some marketing tips that are ethical for ABB treatment. Hard for you to answer, possibly.
The biggest mistake, one of the biggest business mistakes. Let's talk about business now for a minute. Is just relying on one, and that's one of anything. So if you're asking me what marketing tips you've got to do, you've got to have lots of different ways. So you've got to be where your patients are. So if your patients are looking at Instagram, you need to be posting on Instagram. If your patient, you've got to be posting on all the different social medias. You've got to be doing an absolutely amazing job for your patients, exceeding their expectations, getting video testimonials from them, getting referrals from them. I mean, the best way of getting more new clients is definitely going to be handing out referral cards. So hand out referral cards to existing patients, do an amazing job for them, follow them up at home, ring them up at home saying, how was the treatment? How is everything going? So you've got to be doing lots of different activities, I would say. Don't just rely on one, just use 7 or 8, 9, 10 different ways. But definitely post or be where your patients are. And I think the second thing is make sure you're handing out referral cards and maintaining those relationships. And I think if you do all those things, then you will, but you got to do it consistently. Do it every day. Do something every day that will help grow your business. And if you do that, then you will see more opportunities being created.
Effectively, I believe what Suleiman's getting at there is how to distinguish himself from newer dentists who are maybe a little more savvy with social media. How can that be on a more level playing field, which you've answered wonderfully, so that's great. And the very final question is, what 0% finance deals are the best value for the practice and the dentist? Can you give us any insight on that, Ashley?
I don't know. I mean, the company that I recommend people to speak to is Medenta. I think they're owned by Practice Plan now. But I don't know all the packages. You really need to look in that. What I would say is you need to offer finance. You've got to make it easier for clients to do business with you. So I think that's really important. My understanding is, and you'd have to check up on this, but I think it might be Medenta. I've just launched an 18-month, or was it a 2-year interest-free? But again, check up on that. I'm not 100% certain. Something I only heard couple of weeks ago. But I don't know the answer to that question, unfortunately. But the company I recommend are Medenta. I think they overall seem to have a really good package, and you can get an answer quite quickly off them, which is another good thing.
Wonderful. Hopefully Ashley has given you a good place to start looking there, Suleiman, so hopefully that helps in some way. Ashley, we're going to wrap up.
I think this was a private course for Suleiman there, wasn't it?
Oh, what, sorry?
I think this was a private course for Suleiman.
Yeah, I tell you what, yeah. But
Get Suleiman to give me a call.
yeah, I tell you what, we give you a lot. Suleiman got a lot of airtime tonight, but you know what? They were good questions, so I'm pretty happy with those. So thanks very much for those, Suleiman. Ashley,
You're welcome.
We're gonna wrap up here tonight. Thank you so much for
You're
coming on
welcome.
the show. Thank you for giving us so much value as well, because there was a lot of stuff in there that I learned for the first time, and a lot of stuff that I read on your books that really, really, really helped me. Even though you are a Man United fan, I think I'm going to let that slide. Thanks for a very good podcast, Ashley.
Thanks a lot.
And pleasure to meet you, and hopefully speak to you again soon. I'll let you get off.
Yeah.
Mate. In a bit.
Cheers, James.
Bye.
Take care.